Okay, good day guys. Welcome to CSS 102. In this class, we will be looking at understanding the box model, CSS units, padding, padding and margin, they are kind of together, and finally display types. So this is what we did last time, and I'm just going to turn this to just a box model. Even though box model is just one thing, every other thing makes up box model. It's a very interesting topic. So I'm going to list out all the topics here so that I will look at it one after the other. So I will have it in form of a list like so. So we're going to be looking at understanding what box model is all about. Then we're going to be talking about the units, CSS units. We've been using them. All these things we'll be looking at this evening. We've already been looking at them before, but this is now bringing your consciousness to those things. Okay, so these are the four things we'll be spending time on. Let me clear head the other ones that is not needed, and yeah, let's give it a go. I'm going to remove all this style. Our styling, as I've said before, this is where we're going to be doing all our styling now, as opposed to putting them inside head. We're going to separate the whole thing we are doing, and by so doing, giving you guys a better understanding of what's going on. So let me remove this level. I don't think we need this level guy here. We just need listed like this, and let's make it ordered. Okay, we're going to be playing with this data. That's what we're going to be using. This page is what we're going to be using to do everything we want to do. Understanding box model. What is box model all about? Box model theory is very simple, and what it says is that everything is a box. Everything you are dealing with in HTML as it is, HTML element as it is, everything is a box. That is just it. Okay, so what do you mean by that? What do you mean that everything is a box? Literally, everything is made up of a box. So how do I convince you, or how do I show you that everything is a box? I need to do a styling to give you that proof. So I'm going to use something I call universal selector. A universal selector selects everything, like it applies a style to everything. So this is what we call a universal selector. Remember, we did selector by name the last time. We did selector by class and also by ID, and this is just a way to identify a universal selector, meaning select everything on the page you are looking at and style it. So just to give you what I mean, so I can say everything should have color red. As you can see, everything now has color red, except for the one I explicitly state that it should have a flag which carries orange. So that's what universal selector does, ability for you to select everything on a platform. So I want to enable a particular properties, and that is to implement a border. So border is a kind of property that can be applied to any element, and that is to give that element a border. So border is something that is available to all elements, but it's not just there. It's like air is there, but we can't see it. So but in this case, you are giving a value to the border that you can see, and then you are making it show. Border has received three parameters. The parameters are the size of the border, the shape, solid and whatnot. There are different kind of shapes, and then the color. So this now shows you that everything is inside a box, kind of. So you can see the topic is inside a box. If you see all these individual things, they are inside, each of them are inside boxes. So you can go ahead and even talk about one particular one. Let's look at the flag thing, and let's put the flag guy inside a box and see what happens. Let's implement this border feature thing. So us implementing the border, you will notice that the CSS unit is now placed inside a box. So that is a way I can show you that everything is a box. Now, it's not just for fun saying that everything is in a box. What does it benefit us, or we knowing that everything is a box? The purpose of us identifying these is such that we can be able to move things around. Remember what CSS is majorly for. CSS is majorly for changing the position of elements, changing the physical appearance, changing the physical location, and whatnot. So if something is a box, it means the item can move within that box. You can do some gymnastics within that box. That's the primary aim of explaining what a box model is all about. Now we're going to be focusing on flag. I'm going to move that flag to this section. I'm going to tie it to where we have understanding the box model. I think it's better to, use that approach for that. Now, if you look at this section that I'm talking about now, understanding the box model, you will notice that everything is tightly compact together, which is fine. But I'm going to start showing you some features that will allow you to appreciate what the box model is all about. We've just talked about one single thing, and that is the border. The border is part of the box model, and what it does is to give a border to the elements that you are dealing with. And not just only the border, there are other properties which we will be talking about. The next part I want to talk about is the padding. Remember, we talked about the fact that we want to explain padding and margin. We'll still talk about the CSS unit. Everything is tied towards this box model of a thing that we're looking at. Okay, so where does the next thing flows? Let's start with this 1px that we have here. Remember, I told you the border has 3 parameters. It has the size of the border and the type of the border and the color. So let's play with this. So you can change this and say, hey, I want the border to be 4px. What is px? Px stands for pixels. Now, pixels is the smallest unit on your screen. If you look at your phone, if for those people that are phone savvy or tech savvy, you will notice or discover that when you're purchasing all these smartphones or whatever, they will tell you that it has so many whatever pixels. That pixels is a measure of units, is the way you measure things on your computer or on your display. So if you want to measure dress, a tailor wants to sew a dress for you, you want to measure it, it's measured in centimeter or inches and whatnot. So in screen world, everything is measured in pixels. That doesn't mean you can't bring centimeter, inches, meters in here, but personally I prefer using pixels because that way I can easily see, oh, this is 4 pixels. So you can go ahead and use other forms of measurement, and we're going to come to measurement in details very soon. We're going to come to measurement in details, but I don't want to stay too much here. But that's just to explain to you that we have pixels, and if you try to put other ones, we have other ones there. This is using M, there's rem, there's quite a lot of them. There's ch, there's inches, there's inches. You can see inches is very big, so this can be like 1 inch, for example. This is very big, so we're going to talk about it later. So for now, let's stick to pixels, which is 1px. So let's say we have 4 pixels. So that's how you play with this part. Once I finish explaining some part of this, I will go deep into the CSS unit, because that's what we're about doing now. We're already doing CSS unit now. Okay, moving on. The next part is the solid part, which talks about the shape of the border. So we also have other kind of shape. We have dashed. As you can see, it's dashed. We have dotted, and other ones as well. So I'm just going to stop at that. So let me just say solid. The next part is the color. So you can decide the color of your border, and by default this border can also be removed, but it's there. It's a property of a box model, so you don't need to use it if you don't need it, but this is just to tell you that it's there. What other thing is available in the box model? The next thing is the padding. Now the padding is the space between the element and the border. The padding is the space between the element, that's the content of the element, and the border that we just saw now. Padding is the space between the element, and that's the element content, and the border. So how do you pass the parameter for padding? Padding has, different ways by which you can express it. So padding is available on the left side, on the top side, on the right side, and on the bottom. So that's 4 areas. Because if you have a box, you have several areas you can add space to it. You can add space on the top, bottom, left, and right. So how do you specify those locations? You can specify it explicitly by saying padding top. Now this is you specifying that you want to add a top to it. So again, we go with our measurement. So I'm going to use 10px. So you can see what happened. Look at what, let's put something very big so that it can be obvious. So this is 40px, and you can see the space between the element content and also the top. That's being explicit. So you can say, oh, you also want to update for the bottom. And then you have that right there as well set. So you guys are seeing what is happening now. This is one of the benefits of box model. You can start doing some gymnastics, and this is just to one particular element. You can add it to any element that is available to you for you to control. Okay, so you can go ahead and knock yourself out, and you can guess it. You can do left as well as right. So this is you explicitly specifying the space between the element content and also the distance between the element content and the padding and the border. Mind you, you can totally remove the border and that space is still there. I explained this border thing like air, so air is there doesn't mean that because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So your border are always there, kind of having 0 pixels by default. So this is the way your border shows by default, or let me just say better still, it shows like this as none. This is the way. So when they say none, it means it's not visible. It doesn't mean it can't manifest when you provide the information for it. When you provide the information for it, it just manifests itself and then you can see it physically. Now this is method 1 of you specifying your padding, and this is explicit. So if you want to use shortcuts to specify your padding, you can use it this way. I'll put comments here so that I can specify it in another method so that you can compare between what I just did and on the bottom. Now, if you want to use fixed width for top, left, right, and bottom, you can just go ahead and put a single value right in there. And you get to see all the whole section having that parameter.
How are you going to do it?
Very easy. You want to pad 1 to 4. You go to your CSS, or rather you go to your HTML. This is your HTML, right? Remember I showed you how to target a particular element. We want to target li. So what you do is just to target li and you style it. So let's target li. So this is us targeting li, and let's go ahead and apply the padding for all the 4 elements. So you do padding, and let's say we want to put padding left or padding top. So let's say 40. Do you see your results? So this is how you do it. This is how you add the padding, and this is why I explained selector to you. You know how to do basic selector. So it means you can, target literally basic things on your HTML page. And continue the explanation I was doing here. And this is trying to say that is, like I mentioned, it's a shorthand for you to style all rounder, all the flag. Remember, this is flag. This is just targeted at flag alone. So what if I want to do something like this, exactly the same scenario? Because now if I do 40 here, this 40 is tied to all the O parts. But notice there's a 10 here. So how does this shorthand works? How does it help me? So I'm going to write the solution for you here. This is the solution at the bottom, or the full shorthand, how it is written. The way the full shorthand is written is like this: padding, and you don't have to cram it, by the way. So you can be using these ones, right? You don't have to cram it or anything. The more you use all these stylings, the more it sticks, to you. So you start with top, right, bottom, and left. So this is how the shorthand is. So anything you pass here, deploy or affect this. So let's give it a try. So top is 40. That's this one. The next one is right. So right is 40, even though we can't see it physically. Then let's move to the next one. The next one is bottom. So bottom is also 40. Then the next one is what? The next one is 10, which is supposed to be left. So let's see 10. Do you see the result? So that's your result, guys. So this is equivalent to all these guys. So when you start doing this, as I mentioned, you will get used to it. So for now, you can stick to the ones that is explicit and just enjoy using this. Okay, everything I've explained for padding applies to margin. Remember I said we're going to be doing padding and margin. So currently the whole thing I'm explaining is box model. So let me change this whole thing to do something else. So the whole thing I'm explaining is understanding box model, right? And currently we are in padding and margin. So I can do something like this and flag. I can do padding and margin. Okay, so that gives you an idea of where we are in the picture of things. Now, I was talking about margin. Everything I've explained in padding is actually the same thing in margin. However, margin is a distance from the border outside. Margin is a distance from the border outside. So let's give it a try and see. So margin is written as margin, like so. So everything I explained, like margin top, you can write margin top and put the value. You can see margin, right, and the rest. Or you can just say margin and put a single value, and that will be applied to the top, right, bottom, and left. So let's say 40 and watch what happens. So immediately I say 40. Do you notice what happened here? The distance between from the border to the edge. So it start counting is 40 px like this until it gets to where 40 stops, and then you stop. The same thing, it does it for left, bottom, and right. And like I said, you can just apply it to a single place. So if you want to apply it to left side, you will notice what happened. So you see that. So even though this design we are doing now is not making sense for now, but you start using these when you are targeting a specific design. So for now, I'm just explaining the properties to you, and these properties you need to know them so that when you are trying to move boxes around or move elements around, you know what to implement to move them the way you want them to move. Okay, let me just quickly show you guys a trick. Let me quickly show you guys a trick. And since we're moving away from padding and margin, I want to show you guys a trick. And that's one of the easiest way to center an item. Is an easiest way to center an element also. So you can specify the dimension of the left to be auto, meaning the distance to be auto, and the right to be auto. Then you can specify, I don't know if we are supposed to mention this particular one at this point. That's using width at this point, but I think I will mention it since I've talked about it, even though width was not part of, I think at some point in the video I mentioned width, but let me talk about width as it is. So even though this might not be a proper way to explain this, because this is a list, you will not want to push list in the middle, things that you want to move around, because remember we're moving a box, not necessarily a text. Remember you guys have done text formatting. This is not text formatting now. This is formatting an entire element per se. So one of the tricks that people use to center an element is changing the margin left and right to be auto. So remember what margin is. Margin is the distance from the border to the end or to wherever. So me setting it to auto clears this part, and me giving it a width does this. We've not talked about width, but from the name, from what you are seeing, width is the dimension, the width of the element. So let me backtrack and leave this guy alone. Let me backtrack. Let's go to CSS unit. Then we'll come back to the last thing we'll talk about is display type. CSS unit. CSS unit is a mode of measurement. That's how you measure. You are going to be measuring things in CSS a lot. You are going to be specifying, you are going to be specifying approximate. This should be 10, this should be 20. You're going to be measuring things a lot. Things are not just going to be scattered anywhere. You're going to decide that this is the font, the number of, the size of the font you want. You're going to specify the width. Trust me, you're going to be specifying, making a lot of decision that has to do with measurement. So that's why we've also put this under box model, because you'll be changing width and height and making padding and all those things. So you need to know what governs those CSS units and measurements. So we have two kind of measurements that you can make, two types of measurements, and we have relative and absolute. So relative measurement and absolute measurement. So from the name, I will use the name to explain it. Relative meaning is depending on something. So let me say relative means depends on something. So even though we're going to define what that something is, absolute means fixed. Absolute. So I like to use this as an example. If I said give me 10% of your salary, right? So it means if you earn 100 naira or $100, I will always get $10 because it's relative. So I'll use another example. So relative depends on screen size. Is that the right one to use? Yeah, the screen size. So if your screen size is 700 pixels, if you use a relative value is going to depend on your screen size. I'm going to give you guys an example. Just hold on, guys. So relative always depend on how much you have. If you have $1 billion, if I want 10% of it, so the more screen size you have, the more relative works to your benefit. While absolute is not too precise, it's not dependent on your screen size. Absolute takes whatever you give it. So you're earning the same 1 billion and I said I want $10. It's fixed. What I want is fixed irrespective of how much you earn. I'm just asking for this bit irrespective of how much you earn. So the values I've been using so far has all been absolute. The values I've been using so far have been absolute because I'm being specific. So I'll say specific, even though relative too can be specific, but let me just say fixed. I'm being specific, I'm being direct, I'm putting an actual measurement to it. You can measure it and you can see that is 4 pixels, right? So that's what I've been using so far, or the one I've been using so far. Now let me bring in the width and show you. That's where you will see the difference. So let's say we have 400 pixels, and I've mentioned to you that pixels is what is absolute. So if you take this 400 anywhere, take this 400 to your phone, it will be 400 anywhere. 400 pixels on this my monitor is the same 400 pixels on your phone. There's no difference. But if we are talking about absolute, how do you rate absolute? Absolute is example of absolute. So let me put this one here. Example of absolute is percentage, while example of relative is percentage, while example of absolute is pixels. I like to use these two guys. So for now, for your level, I'm just going to mention these two guys, but there are major different ones that fall into this different line, and they are used for different purposes. So let's move on, guys. So how do we now implement this here? How do we implement this section? Let me copy it out so that you can see it. So relative, to implement relative, you use percentage. Obviously, when you are talking about percentage, it's always over 100. It means there's something that you are trying to cut out of. There's something you are trying to take out of a cake or something. So when you say percentage, let's now do 50%. All of us know what 50% means. It means half. of whatever you have resources over. So 100% is from here to here. You can see the difference. So let's even do something else now. Let's create another flag, and we'll call this flag 2, so that you can see relative and absolute in works. So I'm gonna put this like this and call this flag 2. Let's tag this one flag 2, since it's CSS units we're talking about, and let's give it the same border. Let's give it the same border, but we might just change the color a little bit to, let me put some adventurous color, blue. Okay, so now you can see that both of them are having that relative percentage. Let's now see flag 2. Let's change it to absolute, and let's do 500 pixels. So do you see what's happening? Now I'm gonna change my screen size and show you what is going on. So as I move my screen size, look at what happened to the relative. The relative is changing based on what is available. But look at what is happening to absolute. Absolute is not changing. Like is absolute. That's 500. You dare not take anything from it. 500 is 500 anywhere you go. So, and there are scenarios where you will need these things in play. There are scenarios when you will need something to be relative and where you need something to be absolute. And that's why you need to know the mode of kind of measurement of units that you have. So you have relative and absolute. So I believe that should clear the air on that part. Okay, what we need to talk about now is display type. For now, in your level, we say we have 2 type of display for your level. We have more than 2 type of display. We have more than we have like 7 or thereabouts type of display. But for your level, we have 2 types of display that you should pay attention to, and they are block and inline. So let me write down out as well. Block and inline. They also have definition. So block, very simply, takes the whole space. That guy is greedy. Take the whole space. While inline shares with the neighbor, shares with people, shares with others. Okay, so what does that mean, right? How does this affect what we are doing? By default, every element has the way they are being designed. As you must have noticed, if you write H1 comes with a specific font. I mean, the font is bigger and then it has spaces. So all these elements, when they created them, they come with their own properties by default. So each element has a default display type, right? So you need to know that, and you need to know all their display type. You know, they have, not that you need to know it, when you use it, you will see the kind of display type they have. So I'm going to show you 2 elements now, and you will see their display type in works right now. So let's go to, since we're working with display type, I'm going to, let me just put it inside here. Okay, let me flag it as well. I'm going to flag it so it doesn't, I'm going to flag it and remove these guys from being flagged. Since we're talking about display, I'm also going to give it some features so that we can see it clearly. So I'm going to do padding 20 px and also margin so that it's well margin 20 as well. So I want to show you 2 elements and then you can see what's going on. Even though these elements are also part of it, I'm going to show you one element called span. Okay, we've not used span before. I don't know if we've used span before, so it's safe to use. And I'm going to say span, like I'm a span, right? I'm going to go and do another element, and we've also used, let me use paragraph. Paragraph is pretty popular. Let me say P. Paragraph. paragraph. Okay, so we also need to, okay, let me capture another one. That's italics, and let me also capture bold. So I want to be able to circle all of them. I want to highlight all of them so that you can see it. You can see the results. Very awkward, but I'm going to explain. Let me circle all of them, and I can achieve this by saying that everything inside this should be, I've not taught you this, guys. I've not taught you this one, but don't worry. I've not taught you this one. So I'm going to do white. So what I just told it now is that everything inside flag, that's the meaning of this. This is your next class. So don't worry about this. I'm going to explain this in the next class. So I'm just saying everything inside flag that has, every element inside flag should have border of, 2 pixels and this. That's what I've done. And let me increase the font. Okay, guys, so now take a look at this. You will notice that everything was placed on the same line. Ignore the fact that I did line break. Line break does not have any effect on it. Look at bold and italics. What's happening to bold and italics? They are being placed on the same line, right? What about paragraph? Paragraph, is still standing on its own. Look at my definition, guys. Block element, an item that has a display type of block, takes the whole space. What does that mean? It means paragraphs is what is a block item. It takes the whole space. Look at the second type. The second type shares elements with other, shares space with others. So you can see italics is sharing space with block. In fact, span also shares space with others, but it can share. However, paragraph is not sharing, so paragraph is coming in another place. So even if I put, obviously, you know that H1 will not share. So if we do H1 here as well, H1 does not share. H1 does not share. So we have quite a lot of different type of elements that share and does not share, and they are called block item and inline item. Like I said, this is the two I want to demonstrate now. There are other ones, and as time goes on, we are going to be talking about other type of display. So because paragraph does not share, it came to a new line. That doesn't mean that span is taking the full space. You can see the space left in front of span. It's waiting for another person that can share, that it can share with, but unfortunately nobody is around. But look at italics. Fortunately, italics has bold to share with, and that's fine, it's sharing. Bold is trying to share with header, but header does not want anybody to share with it. So even if I go down and I put another element that can share, it doesn't mean that it will stay in front of header. So our anchor also shares with neighbors. So if you put this anchor now and you take it up to where you have span, you can see that both of them are sharing the space. Span is sharing with anchor, and this is visible because I did this border thing going on so that you can see the difference. Now, why is this important? This is important because some properties or some attributes, some styling will work differently for different types. Some things you can do on block, you can't do on inline. Very important. Some things you can do on block, you can't apply the same styling on inline. Now, this block will be able to do quite a lot of things. You can specify padding left and right and top, but for inline, you can't specify padding up and top. You can't specify margin up and top. It will not listen to you, right? Because it does not, fill in the gap through the whole space. So rule number 1, let's go and style something and see what it is. So let me go and do padding. You can see the natural padding that comes with it. You can see the natural space. Paragraph has space, and here this one also creates a space up and down. So if you try to force a space, so let's style italics specially now. Let's style italics specially because we have only one italics in the department. We can say, just to show you that italics will be styled, let's turn italics to green. Do you see italics is being styled as green? So that's fine. So what I want to show you is I want to apply padding. So padding can be applied to each of the position that you want to give it to, because they also have, what's it called now, they also have border. Remember what the border does, or the padding does? The padding is space between the item and the border, invisible border. Okay, so the padding is working well for not just italics, for everything padding works well. But where you get problem, or you have problem, is the margin. So let's say margin 30, the same margin 30. Now look at what happened. The margin 30 doesn't have respect. Okay, we wrote the 30 separately or wrongly. So the margin 30 worked only for left and right. It didn't work for top and bottom. So those are the few differences that you need to note when you are dealing with inline and also block. So it does not respect top and bottom because it doesn't, it's not a full element, it's not a block element. Only block elements can implement the margin top and bottom. So the margin left and right is implemented. As you can see, left and right are being honored, but the top and bottom is not honored. So we see, I will check if there's an assignment in this class, so that the idea is so that you can experiment all these things by yourself. So let me check if you guys have an assignment on this class.
The question is that why using solid instead of color in that place, and when you did it individually, use color.
Why use, where is the question? Why use solid instead of color? Where's the question?
At the padding. When you did the general padding styling inside that place, you use solid. After padding, you use solid to indicate color instead of
okay, show me the code. Is it line 16? Show me the code. Where in the code?
Oh, come back to the code. We can't see the screen here.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
So what's the question now?
Why using solid to indicate color?
No, I didn't use solid to indicate color now. I didn't use solid as color. I told you that border has 3 parameters. So let me explicitly state it this way. So this is how you write your border. So here you specify the size. Here the type of border, or border width. Let me say width, right? Then here you specify type. Then here you specify color. So these are the 3 parameters that you can pass to your border that gives it what it is. And if you see, that's what I've been using all this while. Look at where I implemented it again. The size, that's the width.
Okay.
The width, then the type, which is solid. Solid is not a color. Then the white, so you can put out, you can see where I used again.